Rightio. Thank you very much for coming out and having a listen to us this afternoon. Very cognizant of the fact it's 4:30 and very close to beer time, so I'll endeavour not to take too much of your precious time so we can all get out and enjoy a cold beer. Rightio. I'll let you digest that disclaimer in your own time. A little bit about NiCo Resources. We're a new entrant into the market. We're a recent IPO as of January this year. A little bit about our capital structure. We have two cornerstone investors in Metals X and Blackstone Minerals. Then we also have board of management accounting for 17% of the ownership of the stock, and then the other sort of 50-odd% make up the remainder of our capital structure. So I thought what might be interesting today is for those in the room that have an interest in nickel and cobalt, which is the primary commodities out of our project. I thought what might be good for you is to provide a reason as to why this investment thematic is gaining, and actually give you some hard-backed numbers as to what's happening with the demand in the nickel and the cobalt industry. Everyone knows that this lithium-ion battery space is what's increasing the demand for these metals moving forward. And you can see from this chart that on the left-hand side, in September 2019, there are 102 of these gigafactories. Gigafactories being the things that produce lithium-ion batteries. Had capital committed to, or construction started, or permits applied for in 2009 to be delivered by 2030. That number has escalated to 304 factories. If you take a nickel, cobalt, manganese chemistry in the lithium-ion battery space, one gigafactory accounts for approximately 30 gigawatt hours. On the right-hand side, you'll see that's the back-solved raw material supply on an annualised basis for one of these gigafactories at 30 gigawatt hours. Take note of that 19,000 tonnes of nickel annualised supply. We'll come back to that a little bit later on in the talk. So if you then apply a 50% market share for lithium iron phosphate, which is the other predominant lithium-ion battery chemistry, you take that 2030 number, the 3.4 terawatt hours, you only apply a 50% market share for nickel as a dominant chemistry, you back solve for raw material supply. That's going to require an additional 1 million tonnes of nickel on today's annualised 2.5 million tonne market. That's a 40% increase on today's annual production rates. So where is that nickel going to come from? So global reserves around the world. These are the top 8 countries on a reserves basis, so economically extractable. You'll see Australia sits in pole position with Indonesia at 21 million tonnes of reserve. But if we look at production from 2020, these are the top 8 producers in the world. You see Indonesia dominates 30% of production. Now the pink and grey denote the types of ore that were extracted. So pink being laterite and grey being sulfide. You see 30% of the market share is dominated from Indonesian laterite, an additional 12% from the Philippines. Remember that chart that showed we need an additional 1 million tonnes of nickel just to supply the lithium-ion battery space for by 2030. You are effectively asking the global nickel production market to take the entirety of the Indonesian complex plus the entirety of the Russian complex and put it into production in the next 7 years just to supply a 50% market share for nickel, cobalt, manganese, dominant chemistries. Is that likely? You tell me. So what does that mean for you guys, the investors who have turned up today and spent your hard-earned time and money to attend this conference? Well, that means you probably want to start looking at companies that have very large endowments of nickel and cobalt. NiCo Resources happens to have the 3rd largest undeveloped nickel reserve on a global basis. So that's not a resource, that's economically extractable metal. We have a contained inventory of a little over 2 million tonnes of nickel metal, and it's located here in a Tier 1 jurisdiction of Western Australia. The other charts on this graph are colour-coded dark for investable jurisdictions, so that would be Australia and North America, grey for everywhere else, and of course ours is the pink. I'd also note that our nickel equivalent grade is 1.37%, which comparatively is pretty high compared to the rest of the projects in the space. Righto, so on to Wingellina and NiCo Resources itself. Wingellina is our project. That's our crown jewel, if you will. We have over 2 million tonnes of contained nickel in resource. That's 1.5 million tonnes on reserve. The project has a long life of 40 plus years on reserves alone. We've got a strategy to deliver, develop and optimise this project through to production. NiCo Resources also stands to fill an existing void that's emerging on the ASX with the likes of Western Areas getting gobbled up by IGO. There's very few ways to gain small cap nickel exposure on the ASX, and NiCo is starting to fill that void. And of course, we look to expand our current world-class resource with additions to our resource inventory through exploration. So a little bit on the project highlights on NiCo, what it is and where it is. As I said, we control the Central Musgrave Project. It's a world-class project. It's located in the Musgraves. We're located 8 kilometres from Surveyor's General Corner, which is the triple junction point of South Australia, West Australia and the Northern Territory. We have mining approvals in place for this project, so EPA approval and a mining agreement with the traditional owners are already in place for this project. That's leveraging a lot of work that was done by the previous owners of the project. And of course, we have significant regional upside in our exploration portfolio. We control approximately 100 kilometres of Giles Complex, which is the prospective terrain for this and intrusion-related style nickel deposits. And less than 25% of our tenure has seen some form of a drill hole in the past. So what is the Wingellina project? So the Wingellina project is an outcropping ore system of approximately 200 million tonnes. We have extremely favourable mining conditions. We've got a strip ratio of 1:1 for the life of the operation, 0.5:1 for the first 20 years of the proposed operation. We have an average ore grade interval thickness of 80 metres, but up to 230 metres at its deepest point. The ore is free digging for the life of mine at the operation. It's actually got an SG of 1.1. It's incredibly soft. It's probably as soft as the New South Wales Back 6. And it also has an exceptionally low acid consumption rate when comparing to other laterite deposits around the world. So we've got a sub 300 kilogram per tonne consumption rate of sulfuric acid for processing. All of these metrics have come from the significant amount of test work that was done on this asset during its last life in the Metals X stable, who was coincidentally a key supportive shareholder of our project. They wanted to retain exposure to the upside of this project because they understand it's a world-class ore body. So corporate strategy to deliver this project moving forward, where are we at and what do we need to do? We are currently undertaking a pre-feasibility study. That pre-feasibility study will be completed within the next 4 to 6 weeks and should be delivered to market thereafter. We are quietly confident that the results of that should allow us to leg pretty shortly into a bankable feasibility study off the back of that. Between commencement of the bankable feasibility study and completion of the PFS, we've undertaken and already commenced looking at value add projects for this ore body to dovetail into the bankable. So we're looking at the addition of renewable power investigation, the addition of high purity alumina refining, importantly the addition of downstream refining and the production of battery precursor products such as sulfates or PCAM. From there, we will take that feasibility study and look at development of this project. During 2008 and to 2012, this project was completed to a pre-feasibility standard, and that showed a project that had a 42-year mine life, doing 40,000 tonnes of nickel and 3,000 tonnes of cobalt in a MHP product. As I said, the project has already got EPA approval. We already have a mining agreement in place with the traditional owners, and we already have sufficient water and power supplies out there, or access to those materials. So this project is bar financing and detailed engineering is as close as you'll get to shovel ready. And of course, we'll look to produce from this asset, and then moving forward, we'll look to bulk out the pipeline with additional exploration targets. So this is the output from the 2008 PFS that was done. The project showed a 42-year mine life. You'll see that some of the metrics that we use there are comparable today, notably the nickel price. However, cobalt price has jumped up 100% from that $45,000 a tonne. And this asset now represents the potential to deliver 40,000 tonnes of nickel on an annualised basis for 42 years. You'll remember from that slide earlier on in the discussion that I showed, an average 30 gigawatt hour gigafactory requires 19,000 tonnes of nickel annualised. Our project, the third largest undeveloped reserve globally, has the ability potentially to do 40,000 tonnes of nickel. That is only 2 of those gigafactories, only supplies 2 of them, of those 304 gigafactories. Where is this nickel going to come from? Probably tells you that being associated with a long life tier 1 asset in a jurisdiction such as Western Australia is probably a favourable place for the lithium-ion battery space and, of course, the stainless space to go looking for long life security of supply of these metals for this industry. So a little bit on the exploration potential of our project. As I said, we command over 100 kilometres of Giles Complex strike. Less than 25% of it has seen some sort of detailed exploration through way of a drill hole. Just by way of background for you, the Wingellina deposit is approximately 8 kilometres in strike length, and that contains 200 million tonnes of resource. We have 100 kilometres of strike length, and we are looking to find another 8 kilometres of strike length to increase our metal inventory. It's a very favourable place to be in, and this exploration upside is the sort of thing that attracts belt scale opportunity. So this is a little bit of a timeline on where we're at the moment with the company. As I said, our PFS will be out into the market in the next 4 to 6 weeks. From that, we'd look to legwork pretty much straight into the detailed engineering and bankable feasibility study. Whilst we undertake that, the company will undertake a dual-tracked financing strategy. We'll also look to upgrade some drilling for the high-grade cobalt reserve, conversion from resource to reserve. There's some low-hanging fruit in that environment for us. We'll also look at exploration drilling at our Claudes Hill project to convert resource to reserve. There's an additional 33 million tonnes on the South Australian side of the border. And we'll also investigate some of these technological advancements in the last 10 years that have progressed since this project was last studied. So in summary, what is Wingellina and NiCo Resources? We are a company that has full mining approval, EPA approval, an agreement with our traditional owners. We're sitting on a globally significant reserve of 1.5 million tonnes of nickel contained. The operation's free dig. We have all of the requirements for power and water supply. And of course, our project is nationally recognised on the 2021 Australian Critical Metals Prospectus list. Thank you very much.